I still check the rear view mirror before I start the engine. Every single time. I have to. If I skip it, I have to start over. This happened about 2 years ago, when I was still doing delivery for a small pizza place outside of town. Nothing fancy. One of those spots in rural Pennsylvania that smells like oregano and old grease and has a handwritten menu taped to the front counter. The kind of place that survives because there is nothing else within 20 minutes of it. I worked nights because the pay was slightly better and because I had nowhere to be. My girlfriend had moved out 3 weeks before, took the dog, took half the furniture, took the kind of silence that used to feel comfortable and replaced it with the kind that makes you want to stay in your car after you park, just to put off walking into a quiet apartment for another few minutes. So I drove, nights mostly, delivered to people I would never remember and who would never remember me, collected whatever tips came my way, and called it a life for the time being. I had been working there almost a year. I knew every road in that area, every shortcut, every intersection where the streetlight had been broken for months and nobody had fixed it. I knew which neighborhoods tipped well and which ones left you a handwritten thank you note instead of cash, like that was the same thing. I did not know what was at the end of Harlan Mill Road. The order came in at around 10:45 for large pies, 1 pepperoni, 2 cheese, 1 with mixed toppings I do not remember anymore. Total came out to just under $80, and if the person on the other end was feeling generous, I was looking at a solid night. I pulled up the address on the system. Harlan Mill Road, just a number, a hyphen, and the road name. No apartment, no unit, nothing else. I typed it into the GPS. The app thought for a second longer than usual before pulling up a route. 23 minutes. I had done longer. I grabbed the thermal bag, loaded all 4 boxes, and headed for the door. My manager, Derek, was at the back desk, staring at his laptop with the expression of a man who had been tired since 2019 and had simply decided to keep going anyway. "This one's a bit far," I said. "20 minutes is not far," he said, without looking up. I did not argue. I went out the back door. The night was cold for late September. Clear sky, a lot of stars, no moon, the kind of dark that feels heavier than usual, like the air itself is denser once you get past the last street light. The first 15 minutes were normal. GPS took me out of town, onto a county road I had used before, then onto a smaller one I had used less. The asphalt got rougher. Street lights disappeared around the 15-minute mark. After that, it was just my headlights and the tree line on both sides pulling closer together the further I went. Harlan Mill Road appeared on my right. No sign, just a dirt track wide enough for 1 car with a small number marker nearly hidden by overgrown brush. The GPS told me to turn. I turned. The road was unpaved and uneven. My Civic, which had about 140,000 miles on it and suspension that had been complaining since the previous winter, bounced slowly over every dip and groove. Branches from trees on both sides reached across the road above me. A few of them dragged across the roof as I passed. The sound was like fingernails drawn slowly across metal. I slowed down. 300 feet to destination. 200, 100. Then the building came into view around a bend. 2 stories. Old red brick, set in the middle of a clearing with forest on 3 sides. The windows were large and dark, every single one of them. No lights on inside, no lights outside. No cars in the dirt lot in front of it. No sign of any kind on the facade. Nothing that told me someone lived here, or worked here, or had any reason to be here at 10:58 on a Tuesday night. I stopped the car, sat there, looked at it. The 4 pizzas in the back seat had started to feel like a punchline. I called Derek. He picked up after 4 rings with the voice of someone who had been hoping I would not call. I asked him to check the address. He checked it, same as what I had. I asked him to check again. He checked again with a tone that made clear this was the last time. Still the same. "Just knock on the door," he said. "There are no lights on anywhere. Maybe they're in the back. Maybe they don't use lights in the front. Just knock." I tried to think of a reason good enough to push back. I could not find one that would survive being said out loud. The feeling I had was real, but it was not the kind of thing you can put into a sentence that another person will take seriously. "If nobody answers, I'm coming back," I said. "If you come back with 4 large pies I'm taking out of your check," he said, and hung up. From my car to the front door was maybe 20 steps across wet grass. I counted them because I needed something to do with my brain to keep my legs moving. 1, 2, 3. The grass was tall and damp. My shoes were soaked by step 4. 4, 5, 6. No sound except my footsteps and the wind moving to the trees above me. 7, 8. The front door was dark wood with an iron handle. No doorbell, no mailbox, no mat, nothing that suggested anyone had stood here recently. I knocked, hard, 3 times. The sound went into the building and did not come back. I waited. Nothing. I knocked again, harder, and then I heard something from inside. Not footsteps, not a voice, not the sound of someone moving toward the door, more like something large shifting. A slow, heavy drag across a wooden floor, the kind of sound that furniture makes when it has not been moved in a long time and someone is moving it just slightly. Once, then silence again. "Pizza delivery," I said. My voice came out smaller than I meant it to. No answer. I was already turning to leave when something at the window to the left of the door moved. Not a shadow, not a reflection. Something on the other side of the glass moved, and when I focused on it, I could see it was a face. A woman's face. The first thing I noticed was not her hair or her skin or any expression I could name. The first thing I noticed was her eyes. They were open too wide, not the wide of surprise or fear, not any expression I had a word for, just open far beyond what felt like the natural limit of a human face, and completely still and looking directly at me. The thermal bag hit the ground. I was already moving. My car did not start on the first try. I turned the key. The engine coughed once and stopped. I did not look back at the building. I turned the key again. Same result. Third try. It started. I reversed off the grass and onto the dirt road, tires spinning slightly on the wet ground, and headed for the tree line. My headlights lit up the narrow corridor ahead of me, 200 feet to the main road, maybe less. I did not make it to the main road. The car began to shake about 60 feet in. Not the engine, the kind of shaking that comes from below, from the contact between tires and ground, the kind that means something about the shape of the tire has changed. I hit the brakes, got out. Front right tire was flat on the ground. The rubber was split lengthwise in a cut that was too clean, too even to be anything accidental. I walked around the front of the car. Front left, same. I walked to the back. Rear right, rear left, all four tires cut. I stood on that dirt road between the dark trees and understood something that my brain was still trying to refuse. This was not road damage. This was not a coincidence. Someone had done this while I was standing at that door. Someone had been out here, in the dark, moving around my car, while I was 20 steps away with my back turned. Someone had known I would park right there. Someone had been waiting. I got back in the car and locked every door. My thumb was already pressing 911 before I realized I had picked up my phone. The operator was a woman.
911,
Her
what's your
voice was
emergency?
steady in the practice way, not the natural way. I told her what happened, faster and less coherent than the version I am writing now. She asked for the address. I read it off the GPS screen. She said units were on their way. How long? I asked. She said she could not give me an exact estimate, but they were en route. I asked whether I should stay in the car or run. She said stay in the car. Lock every door. Do not get out unless there was an immediate physical threat. She asked me to stay on the line. I said yes. I did not know how long I sat there. My phone showed 2 bars that kept dropping to 1. The operator's voice checked in every few minutes, asked if I was okay, and I said yes each time, even though okay was not quite the word. I kept the interior light off. I did not want to be visible from outside. I developed a system. Every few seconds, I would check one window, then move to the next in sequence. Right side, left side, windshield, driver's side mirror, passenger side mirror, then the rear view mirror, then start again. Right, left, windshield, driver mirror, passenger mirror, rear view. The same face, the same eyes, open that same way, looking directly into mine through the reflection. She was close enough now that I could see details I had not seen at the window. Pale skin, dark hair, long, loose around her face, and at the corner of her mouth, very slowly, something that was beginning to form into a shape that could be called a smile, if you were willing to call it that. I do not remember opening the door. I do not remember deciding to run. I know I was outside the car and moving toward the tree line before any conscious decision had been made. My legs had already solved the problem before my brain finished reading it. The forest was completely dark past the first few feet. I ran with both arms out in front of me and still hit 2 trees. My right elbow caught a trunk I did not see. I tripped on a root and caught myself. Tripped again and did not catch myself. I went down hard onto wet leaves and mud, face down, palms scraping against the ground. I stayed down. I listened. No footsteps behind me. No sound of anyone moving through the brush. Just wind in the canopy and my own breathing, which was too loud. I covered my mouth with one hand and forced the air out slowly. 1 breath, 2, 3, nothing. I do not know how long I was behind that fallen log. Long enough for the ground to pull the warmth out of me. Long enough for my heartbeat to stop filling my ears. Then I heard sirens, distant through the trees, red and blue light, moving somewhere through the dark. I got up and ran toward it. 2 units were parked in front of my car when I came out of the tree line, 4 officers total. 2 of them were scanning the tree line with flashlights when I came out of it yelling. One of them raised a hand instinctively. The other one took 3 steps toward me and got a hand on my shoulder and said something I do not remember, but that probably meant slow down. I told them everything. One of them wrote it down. Another spoke into his radio intermittently. The 2 from the 2nd unit walked toward the building with flashlights and hands near their belts. They came back 11 minutes later. No one inside. No signs of recent occupancy. Dust on every surface. Furniture covered with old cloth. Floor undisturbed, they said, except for one area near the front window. They found the devices in the yard. Small metal objects, some of them still lodged on the frame of my car. The kind designed to puncture rubber on contact, impossible to see on a dark, unpaved road. Completely effective. Whoever placed them knew where I would park, knew what angle I would approach from, knew how much time they would have while I was at the door. One of the officers said it looked like a 2-person operation. A man outside to place the devices, and move when I was occupied. A woman at the window. A method, not improvised. He said they had probably retreated into the forest before the units arrived. He said the report would go to the sheriff's department, and they would investigate. He did not say they expected to find anyone. His voice did not carry that expectation. I did not ask follow-up questions. One of the officers drove me back to town. I sat in the rear seat of the patrol car and watched the window the entire way, not the view outside, the glass itself, what it showed, the reflection of the interior, the seats, the headrests. the space behind me. I sent Derek a message at 3 in the morning. He replied around noon the next day. The reply was short and did not include anything I would describe as concern for my well-being. I did not go back after that. A week later, I was working at a grocery store 2 blocks from my apartment. The hours were worse, but the buildings were never in the middle of a forest, and the parking lot was always lit, and I could see every car in it from the front entrance. The hardest part is not the night itself. The hardest part is what stayed. The way I get into my car now. I do not sit down and start the engine. I sit down and I go through it. I check the right window, the left window, the windshield, the driver's side mirror, the passenger side mirror, then the rear view mirror. Then I start the engine. If I miss one, I start over from the beginning. I do not decide to do this. I just do it. It was already a habit before I noticed it had become one. Like it grew in quietly while I was looking somewhere else. There is one thing I did not tell the officers that night. Not because I hid it. More because by the time I was sitting in that patrol car, my brain had started doing what brains apparently do when they need to keep functioning. It started building alternatives, offering explanations, lining them up and presenting them like they were reasonable, which some of them were. Maybe I misread the reflection. Maybe it was a headrest, or a shadow from outside, or the specific way a panicking mind assembles shapes out of darkness and calls them faces. Maybe the mirror was already damaged and I had never noticed. There are studies on this. The brain under stress does this exact thing. I still offer myself these explanations, some nights more than others. But there's one detail I have never been able to place into any explanation that actually closes. When I ran from the car, I pulled the door shut behind me. I remember this because I heard it, the click of it. One door, the driver's door. One door opened, one door closed. The officer who drove me home had stopped at my car first to do a quick check before we left. I watched him from a distance while another officer was asking me something. I watched him open the driver's door. Then I watched him walk around to the other side and open the rear passenger door. He did not say anything about it. Maybe it was not relevant to him. Maybe he assumed I had opened it in the chaos and did not remember. Maybe that is exactly what happened. Maybe someone in another thread said the most unsettling stories are the ones without a clean ending, the ones you cannot close and put away. I think that is right. This one does not have a clean ending. I am fine. I am okay. I work a register. I go home. I eat. I sleep. But every time I get into a car, right window, left window, windshield, driver mirror, passenger mirror, rear view mirror, it is the sound that keeps me up, not the face. The sound. This was summer 2016, when I was still in college and still had the kind of confidence that only exists in people who have never been genuinely afraid. There were 5 of us that night. Me, Rafi, Dion, Manda, and one other whose name I have made a point of forgetting, because he was the one who pointed at the bush first, and I do not want to remember who started it. We had just left our usual place, a small bar at the end of the street that was never too loud and never too quiet. We came out around 1 in the morning, lighter on our feet than usual and heavier in our heads than we should have been. Summer in our town felt like a wet cloth pressed to your face, but we did not care that night. We just walked. No destination. Just moving so the night would last a little longer than it had any reason to. We cut through a neighborhood I knew well because I grew up around there. The streets were empty, streetlights spaced too far apart, each one leaving a gap of darkness before the next one picked up. Every house dark on both sides. Everyone else already asleep. That is the only reason we saw it. Dion was the first to stop. He did not say anything right away. He just stopped walking and stared toward the fence of a house on the left side of the road. We all stopped because he stopped. Rafi almost walked into his back. "Look," Dion said. We looked. In front of one of the houses, there was a large overgrown bush, the kind that had not been trimmed in a long time, dense and dark, with enough space inside it to conceal something. And inside that bush, between the branches and the leaves gone black in the low light, there was something shaped like a person. Not a shadow, not a pile of discarded bags. Something with a shape. We stood there for a few seconds without moving. Then, because we were all a little drunk, and because there were 5 of us, and because alcohol makes courage feel cheaper than it actually is, we stepped closer. The closer we got, the clearer it became. There was someone inside that bush. Not the posture of someone who had tripped or fallen, or was looking for something they had dropped. This was the posture of someone who had deliberately crawled inside a bush and deliberately stayed there, crouched, head down, not moving. We stopped maybe 10 or 12 feet away. "Hey," Rafi said. Nothing. We looked at each other. Manda pulled the back of my sleeve, but did not leave. None of us left. We were stupid in the specific way you can only be stupid when you are in your 20s and not alone, and do not realize that more people does not make a situation safer. Then the sound came out. Not a shout. Not any human sound I could name. Something between a hum and a grinding. A sound that felt like it was coming from under the ground rather than from inside the bush. A frequency that was wrong in a way I could not articulate. Too low for a human throat. Too steady for an animal. Once. Then nothing. We ran. Not everyone screamed, but almost everyone screamed. And the one who did not scream was me, because my throat could not produce anything for the first few seconds. We ran back the way we had come, our feet loud on the pavement, and nobody looked back until we were far enough away to stop and laugh. Because laughing is what the body does when it needs to discharge something it cannot process as fear. We laughed for a while. Dion bent over with his hands on his knees. Rafi slapped my shoulder too hard. Manda said she almost wet herself, and we all laughed harder. We walked home to our separate houses, carrying an assumption we never had to discuss out loud, that it was someone messing around, a drunk kid like us, someone odd who happened to be in the wrong place. Not something, just someone. I got home around 1:30, drank 2 glasses of water, changed my clothes, lay down. Sleep came fast because alcohol works like that. What had not worked the way I expected was everything after. I do not know what time I woke up. No light was coming through the window, which meant it was still deep into the night. My room was dark in a way that felt different from ordinary darkness. Denser, heavier, like the dark had been reinforced somehow. I was awake, and I could not move. Could not. My hands were at my sides, and I could not lift them. My legs were straight on the blanket, and I could not move my toes. I tried to open my mouth, and air came in, but no sound came out. I knew what sleep paralysis was because I had experienced it once before in high school, but that time it was just darkness and pressure on the chest. This time there was something else. There was a sound, faint, from the direction of the foot of my bed. The same sound. I could not close my eyes. That is the part one I've never fully told anyone, because it is the part that sounds most like a dream. But it was not a dream. I know the difference. In dreams, you do not feel the weight of the blanket on your legs. In dreams, you do not feel how dry your mouth is from last night's drinks. In dreams, you cannot remember the exact texture of the pillow under your head. This was real. My room was real. The dark was real. And the sound was real. I moved my eyes toward the foot of the bed. At first, only darkness. The kind of darkness that layers on top of itself, that makes your eyes work hard to find any contour and find nothing. Then something inside that darkness moved. Not moved toward me. More like the darkness itself condensed at one point. Like the dark had decided to become darker than everything around it, and slowly formed something with edges. I saw the head first. No visible neck, no shoulders, no body, just a head at a height. That was wrong for something standing on the floor. Its face was turned toward me. I could not make out features clearly because there was no light source, but I could see that its mouth was open, wide open, and from there the sound came out. Exactly the same sound we had heard from the bush 3 hours ago. Same frequency, same rhythm. A sound that should not be possible to make with a human mouth in that way. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. My lungs were working. My chest was rising and falling. Air was moving in and out, but there was no sound. Like the connection between my lungs and my voice had been cut. The thing moved forward, slowly, very slowly. Not walking, not gliding. Something in between, a way of moving that does not have a name, because nothing should move that way. As it got closer, I could see more. There was a body below the head, but the body merged with the darkness of the room in a way that should not have been possible. Like something wearing the dark as clothing. You could sense the mass, sense that something was occupying space, but your eyes could not confirm it. Its mouth stayed open. The sound kept coming, and the closer it got, the more I understood something worse than how it looked. I recognized the sound, not because I had heard it before that night, but because there was a part of my brain, older than language and older than conscious thought, that recognized the sound as something I was supposed to fear. Not the kind of fear you learn, the kind you inherit, the kind that makes your entire body understand that this is danger before you have a word to name the danger with. Its face was directly above mine, mouth open, the sound coming out from a distance that should have been close enough for me to feel its breath on my skin. I felt nothing, no breath, no air, no temperature, just the sound. Then something changed, not something I did, not a decision, more like a limit being reached, like a timer finishing somewhere I could not see, and the thing began to pull back, as slowly as it had come, retreating toward the foot of the bed, then further, then dissolving back into the dark of the room until I could no longer tell where it ended and the ordinary darkness began. The sound stopped at exactly the same moment it disappeared, and in the silence after the sound stopped, something in my chest broke open and I screamed. Not a scream I decided to make, one that came out on its own from somewhere that had been holding pressure too long. I sat up straight in bed, blanket thrown off, my breath coming out in pulls that were too fast. I turned on the lamp. My room was empty. Of course it was empty. I sat on the edge of the bed for maybe half an hour, lamp on, checking the corners of the room with eyes that still did not fully trust what they were seeing. Nothing, no trace, no evidence, just my room, just the dark replaced by light. Just me sitting alone with a heart that was still running towards somewhere that did not exist. I told my parents the next morning. They listened with the patience of people who already had an answer before you finished talking. My dad nodded a few times. My mom said she had experienced something similar when she was younger, but not as intense. They said it was sleep paralysis. They said the brain pulls images from sounds that are still sitting in your memory, especially when you've been drinking and your brain is not resting properly. A reasonable explanation, one I could accept. What I could not accept was one detail I did not tell them. Before I screamed, before the thing pulled back and disappeared, I saw something for 1 second. So brief I am still not certain I actually saw it. Its mouth stopped making sound. And for that 1 second, before everything went, the mouth moved differently. Not the sound, not the hum, something slower, something shaped like words. I could not read them, not enough light, not enough time, but I saw the mouth move. 2 days later, I walked past that house again, daytime, alone, for a reason I invented, but which was actually because I needed to see it again in normal light. The bush was still there, smaller than I remembered, The way frightening things always look smaller in daylight. Nothing unusual. No trace of anything. No reason to stop. I stopped anyway. I stood on the sidewalk and looked at it for maybe 30 seconds. Wind moved through the leaves. Nothing else. Then I realized something I had missed that night. When we got too close and the thing made the sound and we all ran, not one of us looked back. We did not see whether something came out of that bush. We did not see where it went. We just ran and laughed and walked home to our separate houses and assumed that whatever it was, it stayed there. We did not know that. We only assumed. I have not had sleep paralysis since that night. That is not the relief it sounds like, because every night when I lie down and wait for sleep, there is a small part of my brain running a question it will not drop, whether it has not come back because it finished whatever it came to do, or whether it has not come back because it is waiting for the right time. The hardest part is not the night itself. The hardest part is realizing that all of us had the same dream without ever planning to talk about it. Rafi mentioned it first, a few months after it happened, not because I asked. We were talking about something else entirely, and he brought up that night the way you bring up something that just surfaced in your head. He said he had dreamed about the bush again the night before, then laughed a little, then stopped laughing. Dion mentioned it at lunch almost a year later. Not to me, to Rafi. Rafi told me afterward. He said Dion had brought it up out of nowhere, said he kept dreaming about that night and did not want to talk about the details. The fifth person, whose name I have made a point of forgetting, sent a message to our old group chat one night with no context, just one sentence. You guys still dream about that night too. Not a question. Then he left the group before anyone had a chance to respond. Amanda has never said anything. Not in the group, not to anyone I know. Still around, still living her life. But about that night, not a single word has come from her in all the years since. I do not know which is worse. For people who, without coordination, without any plan, all mention the same dream at different points across almost 2 years. Or one person who has chosen complete silence. The hardest part is the fact that the sound is still in my head, stored with a quality too sharp for something I only heard twice. I can bring it back anytime I want. The frequency, the rhythm, the way it felt like something that was not made for human ears to receive, but also not something a human ear could unreceive once it had come in. I have tried to describe it to people, and no one has ever been able to imagine it correctly from the description. It was not a hum, not a grinding, not either. Something between that has no name. Maybe it was never supposed to have one. If you are ever out late and you see something in a bush that should not be there, do not get closer. Not because you need to understand why right now. You will understand why later. When you are lying in your bed and the room feels slightly different from usual and you do not yet know why, you will know